Montana looking, throwing in the end zone.
Montana, touchdown, John Taylor.
Young to the air, Young to Jerry Rice, touchdown San Francisco.
Young stumbles on the way back and fires up the middle. Pass is caught by Owens.
Hello and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm your host, Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis, plus timely and entertaining sports and pop culture topics. And today, we're going to be talking about the 49ers clinching a playoff win, Pro Football Focus ratings on offense and defense for the Seahawks game, snap counts, what Kyle Shanahan had to say about Seahawks receiver DK Metcalf, update on injuries, McCaffrey's rushing output this year, if Deebo is going to continue as a kick returner. Then we're going to preview the 49ers upcoming game against the Cardinals, what Kyle Shanahan had to say about the Cardinals, and we're going to dive into it with a full preview, offensive and defensive breakdown, and give a prediction. And in addition, in the 49ers section, I'm going to give my Week 15 NFL picks. There is no separated pro section this episode. We'll save that for episodes next week. But like always, it starts with the Niners, so let's get right into it.
Let's talk Niners.
So the 49ers are officially in the playoffs. I think for a lot of us felt like a foregone conclusion, but it officially happened after the Giants beat the Packers on Monday Night Football. San Francisco can clinch the NFC West with a win at Arizona, or if both the Rams and Seahawks lose their game. But the Niners obviously have their eyes on the bigger prize, the number one seed throughout the NFC playoffs, and obviously a Super Bowl berth. But one step at a time, the 49ers, the first team in the NFL to clinch the playoffs, thanks to the Giants and Tommy Cutlets DeVito overcoming the Green Bay Packers. Let's take a look back at the Seahawks game just for some Pro Football Focus ratings. Top 5 highest rated on offense: right guard John Feliciano, Brandon Ayuk with a 90, Feliciano with a 91.4. I apologize. Kittle 83.5, Deebo 83.5, and right tackle Colton McKivitz 81.3. On defense, rookie safety Jair Brown 88.3, Chase Young 86.3, Kevin Givens 84.1 at D tackle, Nick Bosa 82.4, and Deommodore Lenoir 81.9. The 3 lowest rating on each side of the ball offensively: Juwan Jennings 51.4, center Drake Brendel 50.7, and left guard Aaron Banks 39.2. On defense, backup defensive tackle Kalia Davis 41.8, linebacker Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles 29.5, and outside linebacker / defensive end Randy Gregory 28.6. Offensively, the Stars had a great game, and the three of the 4 main weapons, Ayuk, Kittle, and Deebo, all scoring 83.5 or above. Jair Brown on defense, good to see the rookie, the highest rated defensive player. Chase Young, you saw getting in there. Kevin Givens in a rotational role since Eric Armstead was hurt, and Javon Hargrave went out, I believe, in the second quarter with a hamstring strain, which led to more snaps, and then Deommodore Lenoir moving or staying outside with Ambry Thomas and Isaiah Oliver coming in the slot. In terms of snap counts, 54 total offensive snaps. The usual suspects had most of the snaps, the entire offensive line, and Brock Purdy. After that, it was Kittle, 50 of 54 snaps. The other tight ends, Charlie Werner, played 23 snaps. Rookie Braden Willis played 4. Running backs, McCaffrey, 48 of 54 snaps. Mason, 7 of 54. Eli Mitchell was inactive. On defense, 59 total snaps. Bosa played 50 of 59. His defensive end counterparts, Chase Young played 29. Cleveland Farrell, 25. And Randy Gregory, 24. D tackles, With Armstead out, Javon Kinlaw logged the most snaps at 35. Hargrave, 28, went out with a hamstring injury. Kevin Givens, 24, and Kalia Davis, 22. And this is going to be a rotation that we're going to keep our eye on. We're going to talk a little bit more later on in the podcast, but keep our eye on during the Cardinal game because they're down 1, if not 2, D tackles rolling into Glendale, Arizona. Now, as you'll remember, DK Metcalf and Fred Warner got into a shoving match. Diamador Lenore comes in, throws a punch. But in a way, this was something that was premeditated. And I think Kyle Shanahan, might have challenged his players to ruffle DK Metcalf's feathers, because he's a Seahawk, haha, and to potentially get him thrown out. Now, granted, it happened late in the game, but Kyle Shanahan told esteemed reporter Michael Silver that we will get number 14 to lose his mind, number 14 being DK Metcalf, and jokingly said there might be a Christmas present for whoever gets him. And it wound up being Fred Warner who got him, and it was a combination of the interception, DK Metcalf angrily throwing him to the ground, and after Fred Warner pitched the ball to Dre Greenlaw on the return, he shoves Metcalf in the back on his way up, and then Metcalf chases him down, entangles, pushes, grabs the face mask. Lenore comes in for some pushing and punching. But Metcalf does have that Draymond Green, if you follow basketball and what's happening with the Golden State Warriors, mentality of just losing his cool. And Draymond Green on the Warriors has been suspended indefinitely by the NBA because he is such a repeat offender of playing dirty, taking cheap shots, taking swings, that Commissioner Adam Silver is not sure at this point when they're going to reinstate him. To the best of my knowledge, DK Metcalf is not missing a game or a game check. Neither is Fred Warner. Neither is Diamador Lenore. I'm sure the players got fined. I'm not sure what the fine amounts are. But as you know, Metcalf and Lenore got ejected from the game. Would have been better. I mean, DK Metcalf had the touchdown early on, only 2 receptions for 52 yards, both coming in the first quarter, then nothing thereafter. But this could have been a reverse Eagles Big Dom type of thing where, hey, I would sacrifice nickel corner Isaiah Oliver for Metcalf. Let him be the one that gets into a fight. They both get tossed. And then you move maybe Womack or somebody inside. I don't think losing Oliver would be that huge of a loss, but they were already down Charvarius Ward, who only played 4 snaps before his groin acted up, and he is questionable for the Arizona game. We'll get more into that in a second. But not a bad idea actively or inadvertently going after a player that has a temper to get him off field. He was a non-issue in the game for the 2.5 quarters that led up to that scuffle. But here's what Diamador Lenore said about it afterwards. Quote, I feel bad about that. I only hurt the team, so I felt like it was kind of a dumb mistake by me. But I just saw Metcalf going after Fred, so I just wanted to help my teammate. And it's funny because you have Warner, who is a bigger, heavier player than Metcalf. Although as a receiver, Metcalf, is built like an Adonis. He's a big guy. And then you have someone like Diamador Lenore getting involved, who's 5'10", 5'11", maybe 190 pounds, but has that dog in him, that edge, that fight that Kyle Shanahan has said has grown over time, which has allowed him to play outside because he is feisty. He wants to mix it up. He's able to stay with receivers. He has definitely worked on his footwork, opening up his hips, change of direction to allow him to be an outside corner, and playing in the slot early in his career and some this year has accelerated that growth also, because remember, if you're playing outside, you're really only defending one side of the field. But if you're playing in the slot, you have receivers that can go either way, that can break left, right, inside, outside. So good on Lenore in terms of his growth, and Steve Wilkes being a secondary coach at heart, helping players like Lenore and Thomas, who gets the start outside when Charvarius Ward has to come out, helping them grow as boundary corners. But the defense and defensive coordinator Steve Wilks will be tested this week against the Cardinals. Division matchup, throw the records out the window, and they're going to be missing a handful of players this game. They're definitely going to be missing Eric Armstead with a foot and knee issue. They might be missing Javon Hargrave, so that will be your starting defensive tackles, and Hargrave is nursing a hamstring injury. Greenlaw should play. He's got a hip and ankle injury, went back into the game. Linebacker Oren Burks has a knee injury, but could have gone back in the game per Kyle Shanahan, so Burks should be able to play. Charvarius Ward at corner, groin issue. Geez, I can't speak. He should be able to play. And on the offensive side, on the line, right guard Spencer Burford, knee injury, missed last game. We'll see if he's able to go. Who did practice yesterday on Wednesday? Eli Mitchell with a sore knee. Darrell Luter, hamstring, was a full go and should continue to be a full go at practice, so that should help out the secondary. But as I mentioned, Armstead out. I'm gonna figure that Hargrave and Charvarius Ward are questionable on defense. I think someone like a Greenlaw and a Burks are probable. On offense, Ross Dwelly is out. Spencer Burford, probably questionable. So what would this mean from a defensive alignment? It means if both Hargrave and Armstead can't go, then your starting defensive tackles are Javon Kinlaw and Kevin Givens. Second-year player Kalia Davis would be a backup, and I believe that they would elevate T.Y. McGill from the practice squad as the fourth defensive tackle. Cornerbacks with Ward out, let's just say, again, it would be Lenore and Thomas on the outside, Oliver inside, and if Luter's healthy, then he would be your fifth active cornerback, and if they feel like they want a sixth, then maybe Jason Verrett would be elevated from the practice squad, even though he's only been with the team this week, to have him as corner number 6 behind Luter and Womack, just in case, given the familiarity with the team and the system, would not be a bad thing. We'll see if Ward can or can't go, and if he can't, what that would mean potentially for Jason Verrett. Now, McCaffrey, if you've been listening to the podcast, you know how I feel about his usage, or shall we say at times overusage, but he's been healthy this year. He's been on the field each game usually for 80-85% or higher of the offensive snaps. And here's an interesting, if you want to call it a stat or something that he's been a part of. Since week 1, where he put up 152 yards on the ground against the Steelers, McCaffrey has led the league in rushing and has not relinquished that lead. Right now, he is over, I think, 1,170 yards rushing. Raheem Mostert, former 49er now of the Miami Dolphins, is 253 yards behind McCaffrey. And if McCaffrey stays healthy and continues with this output and wins the rushing title, it will be the first time a running back led from week 1 through the end of the season and won the rushing title since Emmitt Smith did it in 1995. And that would make McCaffrey also only the 5th running back ever to achieve that. The other running backs being Walter Payton once and O.J. Simpson twice, in addition to Emmitt Smith. McCaffrey, for as good as he's been, he has never won the rushing title. And McCaffrey is also flirting with 2,000 yards from scrimmage if you add his receiving output and project out. If he ends up with about 1,500 yards rushing, he could end up between 600 and 700 yards receiving, which would obviously put him well over 2,000 combined yards. He is not going to be a 1,000 candidate, 1,000 rushing, 1,000 receiving, but he could get 2,000 total scrimmage yards, which would be obviously a fantastic season, and why I and many others think that he should be in the top 5 vote getters for MVP, along with Tyreek Hill, and then whatever 3 quarterbacks you want to put up there, Purdy, Lamar Jackson, and then whoever your 3rd quarterback might be. Let's see who's going to separate themselves the last 4 games of the season. Now, you'll notice with Ray McCloud, wide receiver, on injured reserve, that Deebo Samuel took over the kick return duties and Ronnie Bell was again the punt returner. And it sounds like Deebo's going to continue as the kick returner, one, because Ray McCloud is on injured reserve, but even if he wasn't, Shanahan hinted that the job may go to Deebo because of how dangerous he is with the ball in his hand. And when asked that question, if Ray was healthy, would Deebo be the kick returner? Here was Kyle's quote: "Most likely. This just wasn't a decision with Ray being out. That was also a decision we were thinking about going to regardless. Nothing against Ray or anyone. It was just more ways to get a special player like Deebo the ball in his hands." Obviously good in open space. He's stronger than McCloud in terms of running through maybe those initial arm tackles. And he's, and Deebo has had a good go of it thus far. Obviously, I am a fan of getting the ball in your playmakers' hands really as often as possible, but obviously watching snap counts, kick returns, maybe generally there's 2 or 3 of those per game because a lot of kicks go into the end zone and many teams just take the touchback and the ball at the 25-yard line. But I'm okay with this move. It helps field position for kicks but remember too, if you field the ball outside of the end zone and fair catch it still comes out to the 25. So even someone like Deebo, who's dangerous in the open field, would have to judge the way the coverage is coming down. People are being blocked or not blocked. Is it smarter for me to just fair catch it than try to take the ball out? Because at minimum, you want to get past the 25-yard line, right? That's just, common sense. And another quote from Shanahan, quote, "The more Deebo does," now this is extending to the offense and how he likes having so many offensive options, but knows how versatile Deebo is and what it means for opposing defenses. Quote, "The more Deebo does, the more people are going to focus extremely hard to take that away because if he isn't a good look, that's usually the result you get. And the more we can get people to take Deebo away, that's nothing against Deebo, that means he's a threat, and that makes things easier for the other guys. The other guys being Ayuk, McCaffrey, and Kittle. It is turning into a pick your poison type of offense. There's a strong possibility they're going to have a 1,000-yard rusher in McCaffrey and 3,000-yard receivers in Deebo, Ayuk, and Kittle, and a 4,000-yard passer in Purdy, and that hasn't happened since the Colts did it with Peyton Manning at the helm, and it's a reason why the offense has been resurgent the past 5 weeks. Obviously getting Deebo back, super important. Obviously getting Trent Williams back, super important. But Brock's also dealing. Brock's also a quick processor, and he was compared by someone, I believe at NFL Network, one of the 49er beat reporters to Drew Brees. And I think that's a fair comparison. Not because they're both small Caucasian quarterbacks with not the greatest arms in the world, although that is part of the comparison, but if that's not fully, it's the accuracy, it's the super fast processing, it's the weapons. When, Drew Brees might have elevated some of the weapons that he had around him during his time with Sean Payton in New Orleans, but he also had weapons around him. He was frequently throwing over 4,000 yards, frequently throwing for over 70% completion percentage, was able to distribute the ball on time and accurately. And that is obviously something that Brock Purdy is doing. And in some ways, it is making Deebo more dangerous, Ayuk, Kittle, and McCaffrey, especially someone like a McCaffrey or a Deebo when they're lining up in the backfield, because you have to account for what they're going to do in the passing game if they're not staying in to help block. But when the Niners go with 5 receivers on the field, or let's say, 5 receiving threats, so let's go 3 receivers, Kittle and McCaffrey out of the backfield, defenses need to key on who they're going to take away, whether they're playing man or they're playing bracket coverage zone to take someone like a Kittle or an Ayuk away in the middle. But Deebo is dangerous in his own right, but Purdy helps him become more dangerous by finding him, getting him the ball in yards after the catch, just like every other receiving threat on the 49ers. Now, Kyle had more to say, this time turning to Arizona and thinking about and speaking about the Cardinals. quote, "I've got a lot of respect for how they've done this year. I thought they were real tough at the beginning of the year. I thought we had to play flawless on offense to beat them, but that was a real tight game." Remember, Josh Dobbs was the quarterback at the time. Since then, they have however many games it's been, 9 or more games of reps. They're playing very hard. They're playing together. And they are. And since then, Josh Dobbs has been traded. Kyler Murray has taken over the quarterback duties. They went to Pittsburgh last week and beat the Steelers. Yes, Kenny Pickett got hurt and Mitchell Trubisky came in, but at this point, the Pickett-Trubisky difference isn't that substantial that if Trubisky had stayed in, it probably would have been the same type of outcome. But for the 49ers, Kyler Murray presents the same kind of challenge that Jalen Hurts does for the Eagles, and Lamar Jackson will present next game on Christmas night. But here's what Shanahan had to say, the Hurts versus Murray comparison. Quote, "They're different. I mean, he's still a huge threat to run every time, but there's a little different style in how you play and stuff. He's a problem. We all know how fast and quick he is, and if you give him, no matter what you do in coverage, if you give him those open gaps, he's going to get 15 yards faster than anybody." And that's going to segue to our 49ers versus Cardinals preview Sunday, 4:05, not on national television. San Francisco is a 13.5-point favorite. The 49ers played the Cardinals in Santa Clara week 4, a game that the 49ers won 35-16. It was 21-10 at the half. It was actually 21-3. Then the Cardinals got a score to end the half to wide receiver Michael Wilson. 21-10 at the half, 21-16 early in the third. The Cardinals went for 2, did not get it before the 49ers pulled away for the 35-16 win. If you remember, this was the game where Purdy went 20 of 21, completing 95% of his passes, 283 yards and a touchdown. Josh Dobbs, quarterback at the time, was very good, 265 yards and 2 touchdowns. Running the ball, the Niners, 31 for 124 and 4 touchdowns. That's exactly 4 yards a carry. Cardinals, not bad, 25 for 105, and Josh Dobbs on the ground, 12 for 48, which could be in the realm of what Murray picks up on the ground. So the offensive weapons, Kyler Murray at quarterback, James Conner at running back, three-headed monster receiver Marquise Brown, Rondale Moore, and rookie wide receiver Michael Wilson. Second-year tight end Trey McBride has played really good in the absence of and subsequent release of Kyle Ertz at tight end. Defensively, the Cardinals have 32 that'll be a ton, 32 sacks on the year, 9 interceptions, and they do get Budda Baker back at safety. They did not have him or Kyler Murray the first time that they played. Let's look at some overall team rankings for the Cardinals. They are 26th overall on offense, 30th passing the ball, 172 yards a game, 9th running, averaging 124 yards. Points, they rank 26th, averaging 17.7 points a game. Flip it around to the defense. They are 23rd overall, 13th against the pass, allowing 216 yards a game. 30th against the rush, 139 yards a game. 30th in points allowed, 25.5. And the turnover differential between these two teams, San Francisco leads the league at plus 11. Arizona is at 0. So what are some of the keys to the game or things as Niner fans we want to see? It's Operation Contain Kyle. And this goes back to the Hurts versus Murray comparison. The plan for the D-line per Steve Wilks against Jalen Hurts was rush contain. They did wind up with 3 or 4 sacks on Jalen Hurts, but their goal was to keep Hurts in the pocket, make him beat you from the pocket. So it was not a traditional Robert Saleh, D'Amico Ryans, all gas, no brakes mentality where it's rush the passer first, stop the run second. Although in a way, some of those things do go hand in hand. They were much more careful and disciplined in their rush and gap assignments. Jalen Hurts got outside a couple times. I think ran it only 4 times for 20 yards. Did not do big time damage. Did not have the back-breaking run on, say, a 3rd and 10 or longer to sustain a drive. And that may be something that Steve Wilks incorporates again. Now, they are different athletes in terms of running the ball. I think Hurts is probably the better pocket passer, where Murray is the twitchier, quicker, more agile, could get out of harm's way easier than Jalen Hurts. And yes, he is now a full year, slightly more than a year, recovered from his ACL reconstruction, has no limitations, isn't wearing a brace. Will he feel more comfortable next season than this season? Yes, because everybody says it's that second year, but he is running the ball. And since his return, well, let's start with throwing. Since his return, it's been 4 games. They've averaged 216 yards per game passing. He's thrown 3 total touchdowns and 2 interceptions. So there hasn't been a huge offensive onslaught from Murray through the air. On the ground, he's averaging per game 6 rushes for 27 yards, 3 total rushing touchdowns. So in the 4 games he's been back, he's accounted for 6 total touchdowns, 1.5 a game, and only 2 interceptions. I believe they've won 2 and lost 2 since he's returned. So Operation Contain Kyle is the biggest thing. I mean, especially since, they're not bad running the ball. They're 9th for 124 yards. They have trouble throwing. And a lot of that, if Kyler Murray was playing the whole season, that average would be up. Josh Dobbs did have some good games. He had some bad games as well. So their pass offense being 30th is maybe deceiving compared to, obviously, the last 4 games. They are ranked 216 passing yards a game, which would have them in the teens, the mid to late teens in terms of passing offense, which might be more representative of where they are now. And one of the big weapons that Murray and the Cardinals have at their disposal is Trey McBride, who, even though he was playing either with Hurts or behind Hurts earlier in the season before Hurts went on IR, and that was subsequently released, he leads the team in targets and yards. So he's someone that the Niners, whether it's going to be a Brown, a Gibson, more than likely, a Warner, or some sort of combination of zone coverages to take him away. But beyond Trey McBride, James Conner is a good receiver out of the backfield. They have Marquise Brown, Rondale Moore, and Michael Wilson at receiver. Last game, Brown and Wilson both had 7 receptions, and Wilson had 2 touchdowns. It was the touchdown right before the end of the half to make it a 21-10 game, and then the touchdown in the third quarter to make it 21-16. So the Cardinals' offense is going to look much different, especially with someone like Michael Wilson, who was only 4 games in week 4. Now you're 13 games into the season, more reps that he's had as a rookie as their number 3 receiver. They can't run the ball that well, obviously. They're, or by at least running back wise with Connor, but the quarterback, whether it's Dobbs or Kyler Murray, is going to get that team at or above 100 yards against San Francisco. So this rush contain philosophy, I would expect Steve Wilks to employ. Now, how it changes having both defensive tackles, Armstead and Hargrave, out, and it's going to be some mix of Kinlaw, Givens, Collie Davis, and I would assume T.Y. McGill from the practice squad. Maybe more, I don't know if more or less is asked from defensive tackles when you're playing rush contain. How much are they pushing the pocket? I guess they might be still pushing the pocket, but the D ends are playing to set the edge and not really collapse the pocket, or at the least stunt inside and let Murray get outside on them. But potentially not having either of your defensive tackle starters could throw somewhat of a wrench, or at least have the D line be less productive than they might have been the first matchup, or even the last, say, 3 weeks before Armstead went down with an injury. The biggest thing for San Francisco, though, everything is in front of them, right? The number 1 seed, if they win out, they're the number 1 seed no matter what anybody else does. So no letdown, No sleepwalking through the first quarter like I felt they did against the Seahawks last week, even though McCaffrey exploded for a 72-yard run on the first play and Mason punched it in with a 3-yard touchdown after that to go up 7-0. But the end of the first quarter was 10-7 Seattle. They felt like they were sleepwalking. And coming off of a big emotional game, even though it was a beatdown against the Eagles, could be hard to get up for a team like the Seahawks that you beat on Thanksgiving night in Seattle pretty handily. This is a team that the 49ers beat by 19 earlier in the season, and they're at home, and there may be that feel of if we show up, we should be able to take care of business. But it's the NFL any given Sunday. They're on the road. The Cardinal fans hopefully should be into it. There's probably going to be a large contingent of Niner fans also, so hopefully that away team advantage that they've had at a lot of stadiums will carry over and energize this team to get up on Arizona. Don't take your foot off the brakes all that much, foot on their throats, and just lead from beginning to end. But Murray, this is game 5. He's gotten more comfortable. The only game he did not throw a touchdown in was the first game back. Otherwise, he's had a touchdown in 3 straight games and looking to extend that streak against San Francisco. This is a take care of business game. You cannot look past the Cardinals because you have Baltimore coming in the next game on Monday night, Christmas night. And that is another big game because, again, they win out. They're the number 1 seed, regardless of what the Cowboys or the Eagles do. And the Cowboys have a tough road. They got Buffalo. They're at Buffalo, at Miami. They have Detroit at home. One easy game in there. The Eagles are at Seattle on Monday night this week. That's a game that they can get tripped up on. Otherwise, they have the Giants twice and another easy team. So the only other chance for the Eagles to lose really is this week against a Seahawk team who's going to be fighting for their playoff lives. No letdown, no look ahead. Take care of business in Arizona. Get to 11-3 and keep the pressure on the Eagles. Even if they keep winning, it doesn't matter if the Niners keep winning as well, but a little more pressure on Philadelphia. Maybe they slip up in Seattle, and maybe then the Niners have a 1.5 game lead on the Eagles. And then at some point, the Cowboys are going to drop a game. They've got 3 tough games. Maybe they can get a 1.5 game lead on the Cowboys as well, and maybe even rest starters week 18 because they got the last week of the season. They have the Rams coming in, and the Rams are another team that are going to be fighting for their playoff lives, and it's a division matchup. And even though Shanahan owns McVay in the regular season, that's almost a de facto playoff game for the Rams. And we saw what happened when the Rams and Niners played in the NFC Championship game. The Rams got the win. So I know I'm getting ahead of myself. The Niners shouldn't get ahead of themselves and look ahead to the Ravens. This is a game they need to walk in there, take care of business. I don't care if they win by 3, come out and then have their sights set on the Ravens with an extra day of rest since that game would be on Monday. Couple other points to just make. The first game, Deebo didn't have a catch. He had a couple handoffs, but did not have a reception. First game, it was Ayuk and McCaffrey leading the way reception-wise. I would anticipate him getting involved. And in terms of that passing distribution, so the first game, the Niners only passed it 21 times, and Purdy completed 20, a 95% completion percentage. I've been talking in previous podcasts, what is that target allocation going to look like? I think I would love to see at least 5 targets, at least, for Ayuk, Deebo, Kittle, and McCaffrey. At least. And then if Jennings gets 3 or 4, if Bell gets 1 or 2, again, forget a backup tight end, but let's say a Werner, or if Willis gets in there, gets a look or 2. This is a team that's not going to throw it really more than 30 times unless they have to. So spreading the ball around, that if you can even get at least 6 to your top 4, Deebo, Ayuk, Kittle, and McCaffrey, and then again, a couple for if Mason comes in or Mitchell catches a pass or Juwan Jennings gets a couple targets or Bell, that's where they're going to live. But I do believe, you want to force feed your stars, but if they try to take someone away like a Deebo, it's nice to know that you still have 3 other stars at 3 different positions, receiver, tight end, and running back, that you can go to. Arizona's 30th in the league against the run, allowing 139 yards a game. The Niners should have their way running the ball, but if that's the case, does Shanahan look at this as a game where you could take a committee approach running it? That maybe McCaffrey tops out at 15 rushes and the other 10 or so gets split up between Mitchell if he's healthy and Mason, or if Mitchell's still sore, Mason and either McNichols or Ty Davis-Price, who actually is on the practice squad. This might not be a game if you're running the ball well where you have to give McCaffrey 20 carries. If you're able to gash the Cardinals, gash them with your backups, and let's save some tread on the tires for McCaffrey for the last 3 games and the playoffs. Regarding the secondary, can Charvarius Ward go? It's a groin injury. Even Hargrave on the D-line. Now, do you look at this as a game where you want to make sure Hargrave and Ward are healthy because it's a team that you think you can beat even without those 2 players, and you have good, adequate backups? Sit them, make sure they're right for Baltimore. No one game is more important than another because every game is equal importance in terms of win all of them, and you get the number 1 seed. But is this a game where maybe they hold out one of these 2 more severely injured players? And it's not severe, but more questionable injuries and players versus like a Greenlaw or an Oren Burks. And if he doesn't go, what does that mean for Darrell Luter? What does that mean for Jason Verrett, maybe being called up from the practice squad? Do they keep, if Ward does not go, do they keep the other 5 cornerbacks on the active roster as your game day actives, or do they bring a 6th up as well? Something to keep our eye on. Now, all that being said, Cardinals dealing with some injuries, but none to really any major key players. Their offense is basically fully healthy. Defense, couple questionable on the D-line and a linebacker, but otherwise they are looking healthy. This is a team where unless Kyler Murray gets on a roll and just becomes a complete nuisance, buying time, running, like I mentioned earlier, that back-breaking first down on a 3rd and 10 to keep drives alive. The 49ers match up well with a lot of teams, but I think they match up really well with the Cardinals, a team that doesn't run the ball all that well traditionally with a running back. Their receivers, while shifty and speedy, they are young, and I think the secondary can contain that. Cardinals don't have a great O-line, but we'll see how much Steve Wilks wants to exploit that pass rush versus pass contain. And defensively, I think the 49ers could have their way with the Cardinals. Do I think Purdy's going to go with only 1 incompletion again? No, but I think Brock will probably be in his, normal 21 of 27 or 22 of 28 type of a feel, probably over 70%. Efficiently distribute the ball and get this team to 30 points. So my prediction is going to be right around the spread of 13.5. 49ers, I'll say 13-17 win over the Cardinals. Again, Cardinals, feisty team. They're playing hard. Remember, beginning of the year, people were wondering, are they going to tank? Are they going to try to tank to ultimately trade in the offseason Kyler Murray to try to get Caleb Williams? I think right now, the number 1 pick, which is going to the Bears through the Panthers, if the draft process just doesn't totally upend what everybody thinks or knows about these draft processes, Caleb Williams will be the number 1 overall pick, probably going to the Bears, and the Bears will trade Justin Fields. And I don't think the Cardinals will finish high enough where they can really grab someone at quarterback that they fall in love with, unless they fall in love with a Daniels from LSU or a Michael Penix Jr. from Washington, and they make that acquisition in the draft and then look to trade Kyler Murray. We'll see. But the Cardinals have come out and said that Kyler Murray is a franchise-type player, someone that you build around, which I think he is, but I think that if they feel like they're only going to be a 6-win team, you can maybe be a 6-win team with Michael Penix and get a cheap contract versus be a 6, maybe 7-win team at the best with Kyler Murray, have such a huge contract that eats into what you want to do roster-wise as you're trying to build around potentially a cheap rookie quarterback. But I have the Niners 30-17 getting the win and staying up on the Eagles and the Cowboys and the Lions for the number 1 seed. But let's segue that now into Week 15 NFL picks, the Thursday night game tonight. The Chargers at the Raiders, another temptation of Al Michaels to flat out quit or retire. Chargers starting quarterback Easton Stick, and if you did not know, he's from North Dakota State University. So at least there's a quarterback drafted from North Dakota State University that's starting in the NFL, because it sure as hell isn't Trey Lance, against rookie Aiden O'Connell out of Purdue. Raiders shut out last week in that disgusting 3-0 loss at home against the Vikings. The Chargers lost at home against the Broncos. I think the Chargers will be able to do, hopefully it's not 3-0 again, but more to beat the Raiders in probably a low-scoring game. Saturday, there's 3 games on NFL Network. None of them are particularly appealing, although they do have playoff implications. Minnesota starting former 49er quarterback Nick Mullins also had the UCL elbow procedure that Brock Purdy did. At the Cincinnati Bengals, Jake Browning keeping the Bengals afloat. The Vikings are 7-6 right there for a wild card. I will take the Bengals at home. The Steelers, it's probably not Kenny Pickett. It'll be Mitchell Trubisky again. At the Colts, that's all I need to know. I will take the Colts and Gardner Minshew. And the Broncos at Detroit, interesting game. Broncos play teams tough. Won at the Chargers last week. They are 7-6. Detroit usually plays well at home. I think this in primetime, has the chance to be an interesting game. Lions looking to stay up on the Vikings, who are playing earlier in the day, so we'll know if they have more of a cushion or not, depending on how the Vikings do against the Bengals. But I will take the Lions at home against the Broncos. Sunday, Chicago at Cleveland. The audition of Justin Fields continues. If the Bears are going to keep him or go with the pick in the draft, I will take the Joe Flacco-led Browns. Tampa Bay at Green Bay. Interesting type of game. Jordan Love did not look great at all at the Giants, and there was some talk that, even by me, that they could win the last 5 games, finish 11-6. The best they can finish now is 10-7. And I think Tampa Bay presents a challenge with their receivers and tight end, and Baker Mayfield's been playing some pretty good football, but I will take the Packers at home. Houston at Tennessee. I'm starting to wonder if the loss of Tank Dell is going to hurt the Texans offense. CJ Stroud and the Texans lost at the Jets 30-6, but Stroud was knocked out with a concussion. He's in concussion protocol. I'm going to anticipate he's going to play, but I think the Titans, coming off of that emotional, furious win at Miami, of all places, where they were a 2-touchdown underdog, down 2 touchdowns, with 4.5 minutes to go in the fourth, winds up beating Miami. I'm not going to say Will Levis has arrived, but the Texans really showed something, or Titans rather, and I think they will beat the Texans in Nashville. Jets at Miami. Zach Wilson was named Offensive Player of the Week. Good for him. Had a really good game. Miami dropped one to Tennessee, so you can look at this 2 ways. Like, maybe the Jets have a chance because they lost to the Titans at home. I think Miami will beat the Jets pretty handily. I don't think it'll be a total blowout, but maybe a 14 or 17 point win. Kansas City at New England. New England got a win at Pittsburgh. So what? Chiefs wind up losing at home to the Bills. I think the Chiefs bounce back against an offensively challenged Patriot team. Giants, good for Tommy DeVito, man. Won 3 in a row. At New Orleans, who are 6-7. Giants 5-8. The Saints still competing for not only a wild card, but a division championship in the South. I think they will beat the Giants. Atlanta at Carolina. Atlanta is currently leading the South. I think they will beat Carolina. Carolina, a 1-win team, may not get another win the rest of the way. And this is a job where, based on reports from Peter King, I know people are going to be hungry for a head coaching job, but the amount of meddling that owner David Tepper apparently does with that team, and what a free-for-all it is, how assistant coaches go right to the owner. They bypassed Frank Reich, and one of the reasons why Reich got fired. I will be wary. I'm sure Tepper's going to throw a lot of money at someone to be the Panthers head coach, and someone's going to want to be a head coach, but be careful what you sign up for. Washington at the Rams. The Rams will get the win over the Commanders. The Commanders feel like now they are just playing out the string, whereas the Rams, even after losing last week, 6-7, are going to get the victory and stay in the wild card hunt. I picked the Niners over Arizona. Dallas at Buffalo. I know everybody's feeling good about the Cowboys, about Dak. I think he's the MVP frontrunner right now, just edging out Brock Purdy. Not sure what the weather situation is going to be like in Buffalo. If this was a game in Dallas, I would take Dallas. I think Buffalo beating KC, riding the ship 7-6. I don't think they're really going to challenge for the division anymore, but wanting to stay on the playoff picture as a wild card. I think they match up pretty well with Dallas. And again, the fact that it's in Orchard Park, give me the Bills. Baltimore at Jacksonville went a Sunday night game, good game on NBC, went back and forth on this. Baltimore 10-3, Jacksonville 8-5. If the Jaguars want to even consider sniffing around for that number one seed, they need to beat Baltimore. They could get a game within Baltimore of the number one seed with a victory. The Ravens up in the North, but now you have, they're only 2 games up on the Browns. They're 3 games up on the Bengals and the Steelers, I believe. Baltimore wants to create some separation. I give Trevor Lawrence a lot of credit playing on a high ankle sprain last week. I think threw 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, but had them in the game against the Browns. I think another week of healing. They still don't have Christian Kirk back, but I think Jacksonville at home does enough to beat the Ravens and start to make the AFC North interesting again. And the Monday night game, the Eagles have lost 2 in a row. The Seahawks have lost, I believe, is it 4 in a row? They were 5-2 at one point. They are now 6-7. Interesting game. A lot of people out there talking again saying, did the Niners, create the blueprint for beating the Eagles? Did the Niners break the Eagles after that game? And then they went to Dallas and got stomped. And the Eagles did not score an offensive touchdown at Dallas, where the Cowboys really had their way with them. The Seahawks are not the Cowboys, but the Seahawks put up a ton of points on that Cowboy defense. 35-ish, around there. Philadelphia could not score, could not get into the end zone. It's a week-to-week league. Things change. The Eagles know now they need to win out and get help for the number one seed. And they know that if they win out, no matter what the Cowboys do, they will win the NFC East. But this is a conference game that if they drop this game, and even if the Cowboys lose at the Bills, they would still be 10-4 each. If the Cowboys then win out, they win the East and not the Eagles, because the Eagles would have lost another NFC game against Seattle. Not sure if it's going to be Drew Lock or Geno Smith. I think the Seahawks have the offensive weapons to score with Philadelphia. Kenneth Walker at running back was really taking a back seat to rookie Zach Charbonnet. We'll see if they get them both more involved. Devin Witherspoon injured his back. Their number one cornerback against the Niners. Hopefully he's going to play against the Eagles. And Tariq Woolen may get matched up all game on A.J. Brown. And I could see maybe Witherspoon covering Devonta Smith. That being said, this is a heart and head pick. I'll take Seattle. A Seattle win gives the Niners a little bit more cushion. Yes, it does, keep pace with the Niners in the NFC West. But like I mentioned, if the Niners just take care of business in Arizona, they win the West that day, regardless of what the Rams or Seahawks do. So another game rooting for whoever the Eagles are playing, and I guess in a way rooting for the Bills since they're playing the Cowboys, which I would do anyway just because I dislike Dallas and I've grown to dislike the Eagles. I really dislike Seattle, but in terms of playoff positioning, give me Seattle, and I think they will actually win this game outright. That concludes the podcast for today and this week. Like always, I want to thank you for making us a part of your listening routine, taking time out of your busy schedule. No true plus section this week, although these NFL picks are generally part of the plus content, but the plus section will return next week. Until then, enjoy the terrible Thursday night game tonight. Chargers, Raiders. You have 3 games all via NFL Network on Saturday, and then the rest are going to be played on Sunday and Monday night, Philadelphia at Seattle. So a lot of football going on. This upcoming week is going to start bowl week. I may talk about that in the plus section as there are interesting games. Otherwise, basketball, hockey, college basketball in swing as well. So whatever you are doing and watching, enjoy. And like always, stay happy, healthy, and safe until we talk soon. Take care.